Part 1. The Impossible Problem Doctor. Harrison had been teaching math at Harvard for 23 years. His office was like a trophy room. Certificates covered the walls, awards sat on every shelf, and books with his name on them filled the bookcase, behind his desk. Students whispered about him in the hallways. Some said he was a genius, others said he was just lucky. But everyone agreed on one thing: he thought he was the smartest person in any room. On this particular Tuesday morning, Dr. Harrison was feeling especially proud of himself. He had just finished grading papers from his advanced mathematics class, and as usual, most students had failed to understand the concepts he thought were simple. He shook his head as he placed the papers in neat piles on his desk. These kids today just didn't have what it took to think like real mathematicians. The morning coffee was still hot when his colleague, Professor Chen, knocked on his door. She looked excited about something, which was unusual for Chen. She was normally very calm and serious about everything. "Harrison, you need to see this," she said, holding up a thick folder. "Remember that tech company that contacted us last month? The one with the data problem?" Dr. Harrison barely looked up from his computer. "You mean the compression thing? That's not even real mathematics, Chen. It's just computer work. Anyone with basic coding skills could figure it out eventually." But Professor Chen sat down anyway and opened the folder. "They're offering serious money for a solution, and they've been working on this for 8 months with no progress. Their whole team of engineers is stuck." Now Dr. Harrison was paying attention, but not for the right reasons. The mention of money always got his interest. He leaned back in his expensive leather chair and listened as Chen explained the problem. The tech company was dealing with huge amounts of data every day. Think about all the photos, videos, and files people store online. All of that information takes up space on computer servers. The company needed a way to make these files smaller without losing any important information. It sounds simple, but it's actually incredibly difficult. Their team had tried everything they could think of. They used the latest computer programs, hired the best engineers, and even brought in specialists from other companies. Nothing worked well enough. The files either became too damaged when compressed or didn't get small enough to make a real difference. "They're desperate," Chen continued. "They said if someone can solve this, it could change how the entire internet works. Every company dealing with data storage would want this solution." Dr. Harrison listened, but his mind was already made up. This wasn't the kind of problem that interested him. Real mathematics was about elegant theories and beautiful proofs. This was just practical work, the kind of thing technicians did, not professors. "Look, Chen," he said, standing up and walking to his whiteboard. "Problems like this don't have elegant solutions. It's all brute force, trying thousands of different approaches until something works. There's no real mathematics involved." He picked up a marker and started writing some basic equations on the board. "See, data compression is just about finding patterns and removing repetition. It's not rocket science. Any decent programmer could eventually stumble onto a solution given enough time." Professor Chen frowned. "But their programmers have been working on this for months. These aren't beginners. They're experts with years of experience." Dr. Harrison actually laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made people feel small. "Experience doesn't always mean understanding, Chen. Sometimes the most experienced people are the most stuck in their ways. They keep trying the same approaches over and over." He continued writing on the board, showing off his knowledge of basic compression concepts. "The solution is probably something simple that they're overlooking. But it's not worth our time. We're researchers, not consultants for tech companies." What Dr. Harrison didn't know was that someone else was listening to this conversation. Maya. Santos was in the supply closet next to his office, organizing cleaning supplies for her father. The walls in the old building were thin, and she could hear every word through the shared wall. Maya had just turned 17 2 weeks ago. She was supposed to be enjoying her summer vacation like other kids her age. Instead, she was here at Harvard, helping her father with his cleaning job. Roberto Santos had worked as a janitor at the university for 15 years. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and provided health insurance for his family. Maya didn't mind helping out. She actually enjoyed being on campus. There, was something exciting about walking through buildings where important discoveries were made every day. She had grown up hearing conversations about complex problems and breakthrough solutions. Even though she didn't always understand the technical details, she was fascinated by how smart people thought about difficult challenges. As she listened to Dr. Harrison dismiss the data compression problem, Maya felt a familiar frustration. She had heard this attitude before from professors who thought some problems were beneath them. But Maya knew that sometimes the most important breakthroughs came from solving practical problems, not just theoretical ones. When Professor Chen left Dr. Harrison's office, Maya quietly finished organizing the supplies and moved on to her next task. But the conversation stayed in her mind. Something about the way Dr. Harrison had described the problem made her curious. He had made it sound impossible and simple at the same time. Later that afternoon, Maya was cleaning Dr. Harrison's office while he was at lunch. She always saved his office for when he was away because he made her nervous. He had a way of looking at people like her father and her as if they were invisible. Maya had learned to work quickly and quietly around professors like him. As she emptied his trash can, she noticed the whiteboard still had equations from his morning conversation with Professor Chen. Maya paused in her cleaning to look at what he had written. She didn't understand most of the mathematical symbols, but something about the pattern caught her attention. Maya had always been good with patterns. In elementary school, her teachers noticed she could spot relationships between numbers and shapes that other students missed. But her family couldn't afford special math programs or tutoring. Maya attended regular public school and did well enough, but nobody ever told her she might have a special talent for mathematics. Looking at Dr. Harrison's whiteboard, Maya saw something that reminded her of puzzles she used to solve as a child. The way the variables were arranged looked familiar, like a pattern she had seen before but couldn't quite remember where. She took out her phone and quickly snapped a picture of the board before continuing with her cleaning. Maya wasn't sure why she did it. She just had a feeling that this problem might be more interesting than Dr. Harrison thought. That evening, after finishing all her cleaning duties, Maya sat in the campus library while her father completed his rounds in other buildings. She used the free Wi-Fi to research data compression on her phone. Most of the technical articles were too advanced for her, but she found some basic explanations that helped her understand what the problem was really about. The more she read, the more interested she became. This wasn't just about making files smaller, it was about finding hidden patterns in information. Maya realized that the same pattern recognition skills she had always taken for granted might actually be useful for this kind of problem. She spent the next few days thinking about what she had learned. During her cleaning shifts, Maya found herself looking at problems differently. When she organized supplies in closets, she noticed how different arrangements could save space. When she helped sort papers in offices, she saw how information could be grouped in efficient ways. Maya began to realize that data compression wasn't just a technical problem, it was a puzzle. And puzzles had always made sense to her in ways that traditional schoolwork sometimes didn't. Maybe Dr. Harrison was wrong. Maybe this problem wasn't impossible or beneath anyone's attention. Maybe it just needed someone to look at it from a completely different angle. The idea started small, just a curious thought in the back of her mind. But as Maya continued to research and think about the problem, she began to wonder if she might be able to contribute something useful. She didn't have a PhD or years of experience like the engineers who had failed to solve it. But she had something else, a fresh perspective and a natural ability to see patterns that others might miss. Maya knew it was probably a crazy idea. She was just a high school student who helped her father clean buildings. What could she possibly understand about complex data compression that professional engineers couldn't figure out? But the question kept nagging at her, growing stronger every day. Little did Dr. Harrison know that his dismissive attitude toward the problem had sparked something in an unlikely observer. While he continued to focus on what he considered more important academic work, Maya was beginning a journey that would eventually prove him very wrong about both the problem and who was capable of solving it. The stage was set for an unexpected challenge to everything Dr. Harrison believed about intelligence, education, and where the best ideas really come from. Part 2. The unlikely observer Maya had always been different from other kids her age, but not in ways that teachers usually noticed. While her classmates struggled with math word problems, Maya could see the answers almost immediately. Not because she was faster at calculations, she actually wasn't very good at arithmetic, but she could see patterns and relationships that made the problems make sense. When she was 8 years old, Maya's third-grade teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had noticed something unusual. During a lesson about number sequences, Maya raised her hand and said she could see the pattern continuing far beyond what was written on the board. Mrs. Rodriguez was curious and asked Maya to explain. Instead of using numbers, Maya drew pictures that showed how the sequence worked visually. "It's like music," Maya had said, which confused everyone at the time. "The numbers have a rhythm, and once you hear it, you know what comes next." Mrs. Rodriguez wanted to recommend Maya for the gifted program, but Maya's family was dealing with other priorities. Her mother worked 2 jobs to help pay rent, and her father was just starting his position at Harvard. There wasn't time or money for special programs or testing. Maya continued in regular classes where her unique way of thinking often went unnoticed. Now at 17, Maya had learned to keep her observations to herself. She had discovered that when she pointed out patterns others couldn't see, people often looked at her strangely. It was easier to stay quiet and blend in. But the data compression problem was awakening something in her that had been sleeping for years. 3 weeks had passed since she first heard Dr. Harrison dismiss the tech company's challenge. Maya found herself thinking about it constantly. During her cleaning shifts, she started paying attention to how information was organized in different offices. She noticed that some professors kept their papers in neat, logical systems, while others had chaotic piles that somehow still made sense to them. One evening, while organizing files in the psychology department, Maya had an interesting realization. She was sorting research papers about memory and learning when she noticed something fascinating. The human brain doesn't store memories like a computer stores files. Instead, it creates connections and associations that help retrieve information efficiently. Maya sat back in the empty office, surrounded by stacks of papers, and thought about this idea. What if data compression could work more like human memory? Instead of just removing repeated information, what if you could create smart connections that helped the computer understand what was important? She pulled out her phone and started researching how human memory works. Maya discovered that when people remember things, they don't store every detail. Instead, they remember key points and fill in the gaps using patterns and associations. This was completely different from how computers typically handled data. The more Maya learned, the more excited she became. She realized that most compression methods tried to squeeze data like you might squeeze water from a sponge, just applying pressure until something came out. But what if compression could be more like how a good teacher explains a complex topic? A teacher doesn't give you every single detail. Instead, they give you the important parts and help you understand how they connect. Maya started spending her free time in the university library, researching everything she could find about data compression, human memory, and pattern recognition. She was careful to use simple search terms because the technical papers were often too difficult to understand. But she found plenty of basic explanations and tutorials that helped her build her knowledge piece by piece. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Kim, began to notice Maya's regular visits. One evening, she approached Maya's table in the quiet corner where she always studied. "You're Roberto's daughter, right?" Mrs. Kim asked kindly. "I see you here almost every night. Are you working on a school project?" Maya looked up from her laptop, uncertain how to explain. "Not exactly, I'm just curious about something. It's probably silly." Mrs. Kim smiled. "Curiosity is never silly. What are you researching?" Maya hesitated, then decided to be honest. "There's this math problem that some professors think is impossible to solve, but I keep thinking there might be a different way to look at it." "What kind of problem?" Maya tried to explain data compression in simple terms. As she talked, she could see Mrs. Kim's eyes light up with interest. "You know," Mrs. Kim said, "some of the most important discoveries in history came from people who looked at old problems in completely new ways. The key is not being afraid to think differently from everyone else." This conversation gave Maya confidence to keep going. She realized that her lack of formal training might actually be an advantage. She wasn't trapped by conventional thinking about what solutions should look like. While the professional engineers were probably using standard approaches they had learned in school, Maya was free to imagine completely different possibilities. Maya began developing her own way of thinking about the compression problem. She started by forgetting everything she had read about traditional methods. Instead, she focused on the basic question: how can you represent the same information using less space? She thought about this question in everyday terms. How do people give directions efficiently? They don't describe every single landmark. Instead, they mention the important turns and assume you can fill in the obvious parts. How do people tell stories? They don't include every meaningless detail. They focus on the parts that matter and let listeners use their imagination for the rest. Maya realized that data compression might work the same way. Instead of trying to squeeze every bit of information into a smaller space, what if you could identify the truly important parts and create a smart system for reconstructing everything else? This idea led Maya to think about patterns in a new way. Most compression programs looked for exact repetitions, the same sequence of data appearing multiple times. But Maya wondered about approximate repetitions. What if two pieces of data were similar but not identical? Could you store one version and include instructions for creating the other? She started experimenting with this idea using simple examples. Maya would take a paragraph of text and try to identify not just exact repeated words but similar concepts and phrases. Then she would create a system for representing the paragraph using fewer words while keeping all the important meaning. Her experiments were crude and simple, but they worked better than Maya had expected. She was able to compress text significantly while maintaining perfect readability. The key was understanding what information was truly essential and what could be reconstructed using context and patterns. Maya knew her text examples were much simpler than the complex data the tech company was dealing with, but the basic principle seemed sound. If it worked for text, maybe it could work for other types of information too. She started teaching herself basic programming using free online courses. Maya had never coded before, but she found it surprisingly logical. Programming was like giving very detailed instructions to someone who couldn't make any assumptions. You had to break every task down into small, clear steps. At first, Maya could only write simple programs that did basic tasks. But she was learning fast, driven by her excitement about testing her compression ideas. She spent hours watching tutorial videos and practicing with small coding exercises. Her father, Roberto, noticed that Maya was staying up late and spending all her free time on her laptop. One evening, he sat down next to her at their small kitchen table. This comment stayed with Maya long after their conversation ended. She realized that her father, in his quiet way, had been observing the academic world for 15 years. He had seen how smart people sometimes got trapped by their own expertise, unable to see simple solutions because they were looking for complex ones. Maya felt more confident about her unconventional approach. She wasn't trying to impress anyone with complicated mathematics or advanced theories. She was just trying to solve a practical problem using logic and creativity. Maybe that was exactly what this challenge needed. As the weeks passed, Maya's understanding of both the problem and potential solutions grew deeper. She was still months away from having a working prototype, but she could feel herself getting closer to something important. The data compression challenge that Dr. Harrison had dismissed as beneath academic attention was becoming the most engaging puzzle Maya had ever encountered. She had no idea that her quiet research sessions in the library and late-night programming practice were preparing her for a breakthrough that would shock everyone, including herself. Part 3. The secret solution. Maya's breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday night in October. She was alone in the university library, hunched over her laptop in the same corner where she had spent countless hours over the past 2 months. The building was nearly empty except for a few graduate students cramming for exams and the security guard making his rounds. Maya had been staring at the same piece of code for 3 hours, trying to understand why her compression algorithm wasn't working as well as she hoped. She had successfully compressed text files and simple images, but when she tested it on the type of complex data that real companies dealt with, the results were disappointing. Frustrated, Maya pushed back from her laptop and rubbed her tired eyes. She looked around the quiet library and noticed something she had seen hundreds of times before but never really thought about. The books on the shelves weren't organized just alphabetically. They were grouped by subject, then by author, then by publication date. This system made it easy to find related information quickly. Suddenly, Maya sat up straight. What if data compression could work like a library? Instead of just looking for identical, repeated information, what if you could organize data into related groups and then compress each group using methods that worked best for that type of information? Maya opened a new document and started sketching out her idea. She drew circles representing different types of data, with lines connecting similar pieces. It looked like a family tree or a map showing how different pieces of information were related to each other. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. Most compression programs treated all data the same way, like trying to organize a library by putting every book in alphabetical order regardless of subject. But Maya's approach would be more like having different sections for fiction, science, history, and so on, with specialized organization methods for each section. Maya spent the next 6 hours coding furiously, stopping only to grab snacks from the vending machine. She created a program that could analyze data and automatically sort it into categories based on patterns and characteristics. Then it would compress each category using methods tailored specifically for that type of information. When she finally tested her new approach on a complex data sample, Maya couldn't believe the results. Her compression ratio was significantly better than anything she had achieved before. Even more importantly, when she decompressed the data, it was identical to the original. Not a single bit was lost. Maya's hands were shaking as she ran the test again to make sure it wasn't a mistake. The results were consistent. She had created something that actually worked better than the standard compression methods used by most companies. But Maya also realized she had a problem. She was just a 17-year-old high school student. Even if her solution was brilliant, who would take her seriously? She had no credentials, no degree, no published research. If she walked into Dr. Harrison's office tomorrow and claimed to have solved the problem he had dismissed, he would probably laugh her out of the room. Maya needed to find a way to get her solution evaluated on its merits, not dismissed because of who she was. She decided to submit her work anonymously to the tech company that had originally posed the challenge. Creating a professional presentation of her work took another 3 weeks. Maya had to learn how to write technical documentation that sounded credible and professional. She studied examples of research papers and corporate reports, teaching herself the formal language and structure that serious technical work required. Maya created detailed charts showing her compression ratios compared to existing methods. She wrote step-by-step explanations of how her algorithm worked, complete with code samples and mathematical proofs. She even created a demonstration video showing her program compressing and decompressing various types of files. The hardest part was writing about herself without revealing her identity. Maya created a fake email address and used the name A. Santos, keeping her last name but using only her first initial. In her cover letter, she described herself as an independent researcher who had been working on compression algorithms as a personal project. Maya was terrified as she prepared to send the email. What if the company ignored her submission because it came from an unknown source? What if they tested her solution and found critical flaws she had missed? What if her months of work turned out to be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the problem? But Maya also knew she had to try. She had spent too much time and effort on this project to give up now. Even if nothing came of it, she would know she had followed her curiosity as far as it could take her. On a cold November morning, Maya hit the send button and submitted her solution to Quantum Data Systems, the company that had originally brought the problem to Harvard. Then she went to help her father with his cleaning rounds, trying to act normal while her stomach churned with nervous excitement. Maya didn't have to wait long for a response. 3 days later, she received an email that made her heart race. Dear A. Santos, we have reviewed your compression algorithm and are extremely impressed with your results. Our engineering team has been testing your solution extensively, and we believe it represents a significant breakthrough in data compression technology. We would like to schedule a meeting to discuss your work in detail and explore potential partnership opportunities. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Maya read the email 5 times before it sank in. They were impressed. They wanted to meet with her. Her solution actually worked well enough to interest a major tech company. But now Maya faced an even bigger challenge. How could she attend a meeting without revealing that she was a high school student? She couldn't exactly walk into a corporate conference room and announce that she was the janitor's daughter who had solved their impossible problem. Maya spent the next week researching the company and preparing for what she knew would be the most important conversation of her life. She practiced explaining her algorithm out loud, making sure she could discuss every aspect of her work confidently and professionally. She also spent time thinking about what she wanted to achieve from this opportunity. Maya realized that her solution could potentially help millions of people by making internet services faster and more efficient. Companies could store more data using less space, which would reduce costs and environmental impact. This wasn't just about proving she was smart, it was about making a real difference. Maya decided to propose a video conference meeting, claiming that she was traveling and couldn't meet in person immediately. This would give her time to prepare and allow her to control the environment for their first interaction. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday at 2 p.m. Maya arranged to use a private study room in the library, making sure she would have reliable internet and a professional background for the video call. Meanwhile, word about the anonymous breakthrough was spreading through the academic community. Dr. Harrison heard about it during a faculty meeting where professors were discussing the latest developments in their fields. Someone solved that data compression problem, Professor Chen announced to the room. Quantum Data Systems is calling it a revolutionary approach that could change the entire industry. Dr. Harrison looked up from his papers, suddenly interested. What do you mean solved it? I thought we established that it was just a brute force problem with no elegant solution. Apparently not, Chen replied. The anonymous researcher created an algorithm that achieves compression ratios 30% better than current industry standards, while maintaining perfect data integrity. The company is trying to figure out who submitted the solution because they want to hire them immediately. Dr. Harrison felt a strange mixture of curiosity and irritation. He had been so certain that the problem was beneath serious academic attention. Now someone had not only solved it but created what sounded like a genuinely innovative approach. Do we know anything about who solved it? He asked. Nothing, Chen said. They used a pseudonym and won't reveal their identity until they meet with the company. But based on the quality of the work, it has to be someone with advanced training in computer science and mathematics. Dr. Harrison nodded, but privately he was bothered by this development. He prided himself on being able to recognize which problems were worth solving and which ones weren't. Had he made a mistake in dismissing this challenge so quickly? What Dr. Harrison didn't know was that the solution had been developed just a few floors below his office by someone he had seen hundreds of times but never really noticed. Maya had been working on the problem that he had laughed at, using resources that were freely available to anyone curious enough to look for them. As Maya prepared for her video conference meeting, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She was about to reveal herself as the creator of a breakthrough that had impressed professional engineers and surprised academic experts. But she was also about to face the reality of being taken seriously as a young person in a world that often dismissed ideas based on their source rather than their merit. Maya knew that her life was about to change dramatically, but she had no idea just how much her success would challenge everyone's assumptions about intelligence, education, and where the best ideas really come from. Part 4. The Revelation and Recognition. Friday afternoon arrived faster than Maya had expected. She sat in the small study room at the library, staring at her laptop screen as the clock showed 1:55 p.m. Her hands were sweating, and her heart felt like it was beating loud enough for the entire building to hear. In 5 minutes, she would be talking to executives from Quantum Data Systems about her compression algorithm. Maya had practiced her presentation dozens of times, but she still felt terrified. She wore her best shirt, a simple blue button-down that her mother had bought for school presentations. She had tied her hair back neatly and chosen a spot in the room where the camera would show only a plain wall behind her. At exactly 2 p.m., Maya clicked the video conference link. Her screen filled with images of 4 people sitting around a conference table in what looked like a very expensive office. There was David Kim, the chief technology officer, along with 2 senior engineers and someone from the business development team. "Good afternoon, A. Santos," David Kim said with a warm smile. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We're all very excited to discuss your compression algorithm." Maya took a deep breath and tried to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for your interest in my work. I'm happy to answer any questions you have." For the next hour, Maya found herself in the most challenging conversation of her life. The engineers asked detailed technical questions about her algorithm, wanting to understand exactly how each part worked. Maya answered confidently, explaining her approach and demonstrating how her solution differed from traditional compression methods. The key insight, Maya explained, was realizing that data compression doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all solution. "My algorithm analyzes the structure and patterns in data first, then applies different compression techniques optimized for each type of information it finds." David Kim leaned forward, clearly impressed. "Our testing shows compression ratios that are consistently 30 to 40% better than industry standards. How did you come up with this approach?" Maya had prepared for this question, but it was still difficult to answer without revealing too much about herself. "I started by thinking about how humans process and store information efficiently. We don't remember every detail. We remember key points and use context to fill in the gaps. I wondered if data compression could work similarly." The technical discussion continued for another 30 minutes. Maya demonstrated her algorithm working on different types of files, showed performance benchmarks, and explained the mathematical principles behind her approach. With each question she answered correctly, she could see the excitement growing on the faces of the people on the screen. Finally, David Kim sat back and looked at his colleagues. "A. Santos, I have to be honest with you. This is the most impressive breakthrough we've seen in data compression in over a decade. We would very much like to discuss a partnership with you. Could you tell us a bit about your background and current situation?" This was the moment Maya had been dreading. She had known it would come, but she still wasn't sure how to handle it. She took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. "Before I answer that question," Maya said, "I need to tell you something that might surprise you. I'm not what you probably think I am." The people on the screen looked puzzled. David Kim smiled encouragingly. "What do you mean?" Maya's voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I'm 17 years old. I'm a high school student. I don't have a degree in computer science or mathematics. I learned everything I know about programming and data compression from online tutorials and library books over the past few months." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Maya watched as the expressions on the screen changed from confusion to shock to disbelief. She could see the executives exchanging glances, probably wondering if this was some kind of joke. David Kim was the first to speak. "I'm sorry. Did you say you're 17? And you developed this algorithm in a few months using online resources?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice getting stronger. "I know it sounds impossible, but I can prove everything I've told you about my work. I have documentation of my entire development process, including early versions of the code and my research notes." One of the engineers, a woman named Dr. Patricia Vega, leaned toward the camera. "Can you walk us through your learning process? How did you go from knowing nothing about compression to creating something that stumps our best engineers?" Maya spent the next 20 minutes explaining her journey. She talked about overhearing Dr. Harrison dismiss the problem, her initial curiosity about patterns and data organization, her months of self-directed learning, and her breakthrough insight about treating different types of data differently. As she spoke, Maya could see the skepticism on their faces gradually changing to amazement. These were experienced professionals who understood how difficult it was to master the concepts Maya had taught herself in such a short time. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," David Kim said slowly. "You heard about this problem by accident, taught yourself programming and data compression theory in your spare time, and created a solution that our team of PhD engineers couldn't develop in 8 months of full-time work? That's right, Maya said. I know how it sounds, but sometimes being new to a field can be an advantage. I wasn't limited by assumptions about what solutions should look like. Dr. Vega nodded, thoughtfully. Actually, that makes sense. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in technology have come from people who approached old problems with fresh perspectives. But I have to ask, what's your real name? And how can we verify your claims? Maya realized there was no point in hiding anymore. My name is Maya Santos. I live here in Cambridge with my parents. My father works as a janitor at Harvard University, which is how I first heard about your company's challenge. The revelation that she was the daughter of a janitor seemed to surprise them even more than her age. Maya could practically see them, trying to reconcile their image of a brilliant algorithm designer with a teenager whose family cleaned university buildings. Maya, David Kim said, and hearing her real name felt both terrifying and liberating. Would you be willing to meet with us in person? We'd like to verify your work and discuss what comes next. Maya agreed to meet them the following Monday at their offices in downtown Boston. After the video conference ended, she sat alone in the study room for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. She had revealed her secret to complete strangers, and instead of dismissing her, they wanted to work with her. But Maya knew her biggest challenge was still ahead. Word about the anonymous breakthrough was spreading through Harvard, and it was only a matter of time before people discovered that the solution had come from someone in their own community. That revelation came sooner than Maya expected. On Sunday evening, Professor Chen was having dinner with her neighbor, who happened to work in the university's IT department. The neighbor mentioned hearing rumors about a major data compression breakthrough that had connections to Harvard. I heard the person who solved it use the pseudonym A. Santos, the neighbor said casually. Isn't that interesting? There are probably a dozen Santos families connected to the university in some way. Professor Chen nearly choked on her coffee. She immediately thought of Roberto Santos, the friendly janitor who had worked in her building for years. But surely it couldn't be connected to him, could it? The next morning, Professor Chen found herself paying attention to Roberto in a way she never had before. She noticed that he seemed proud and excited about something, humming quietly as he worked. When she saw him with his daughter, a young woman she had seen around the building but never really noticed, something clicked. Professor Chen approached Roberto during his lunch break. Roberto, can I ask you something? Your daughter, what's her name? Maya, Roberto said, his face lighting up with parental pride. She's been working very hard on some kind of computer project. I don't understand all the details, but she's very excited about it. Professor Chen felt her heart racing. Maya Santos. Has she been working on anything related to data compression? Roberto looked surprised. Yes, actually. How did you know? She's been spending all her time learning about computers and mathematics. She even got some kind of meeting with a big company today. Professor Chen excused herself and immediately went to find Dr. Harrison. She found him in his office, grading papers with his usual expression of mild disappointment with his student's performance. Harrison, she said, slightly out of breath, I think I know who solved the compression problem. Dr. Harrison looked up, mildly interested. Oh? Did someone at MIT finally step forward? No, Professor Chen said. It's Maya Santos, Roberto's daughter, the janitor's daughter. Dr. Harrison stared at her blankly. I'm sorry, what? Professor Chen quickly explained her conversation with Roberto and the connection to the mysterious A. Santos, who had solved the problem. As she spoke, Dr. Harrison's expression changed from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like panic. That's impossible, he said firmly. A 17-year-old girl with no formal training couldn't solve a problem that professional engineers have been working on for months. But even as he said it, Dr. Harrison remembered something that made his stomach sink. He recalled Maya cleaning his office, remembered seeing her pause to look at his whiteboard. He had assumed she was just curious about the equations, not actually understanding them. The truth hit Dr. Harrison like a physical blow. While he had been dismissing the compression problem as beneath academic attention, Someone had been listening. Someone had taken his challenge seriously when he had not, and that someone had been in his office dozens of times, quietly observing, while he pontificated about the limitations of practical problems. Maya's success forced Dr. Harrison to confront uncomfortable truths about his own assumptions. He had judged the problem based on its source rather than its merit. He had dismissed Maya's potential based on her background rather than her ability. Most painful of all, he had been completely wrong about both the problem and the person who would solve it. Meanwhile, Maya was at Quantum Data Systems offices, signing a consulting agreement that would pay for her college education and launch her career in technology. The company wanted to license her algorithm and hire her as a part-time consultant while she finished high school. When Maya returned to Harvard that evening to help her father with his cleaning rounds, she found Professor Chen waiting for them in the mathematics building lobby. The professor's eyes were bright with excitement and something that looked like admiration. "Maya," Professor Chen said, "I think we need to talk. The entire university is going to want to hear your story." Maya looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly. She realized that her secret was out and her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. But for the first time since this whole journey began, Maya felt ready for whatever came next. Dr. Harrison, meanwhile, was alone in his office, staring at the whiteboard, where he had first written the equations that had started Maya's incredible journey. He was beginning to understand that the most important lessons don't always come from textbooks or lectures. Sometimes they come from paying attention to the people around you and remaining humble enough to learn from unexpected sources. Maya's story was just beginning, but it had already taught everyone involved that brilliance doesn't always come with credentials, and the most revolutionary solutions often come from the most unlikely places.